Hi, this is Simon Obstell and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion. And today I want to show you this interesting graphical effect that I'm calling Zipper. So it zips closed, zips open, zips closed again. So really quite interesting effect. Let's take a look at how it's done. Okay, so I'm going with 1920 1080, 24 frames a second and a duration of 10 seconds. First thing I want to do is just bring in a background, so color solid, bring that in, make it something less objectionable. Okay, then I'm going to pick a new group, object new group. I'm going to grab the text tool and I'm going to type my text. So let's zoom it right up like that, center it up there. Let's reset its center there, come back over here. I'm just going to adjust that baseline so it sits just about like that. Let's just maybe just increase the scale even more to something like that. So we've just got the same sort of margin at the left and right. And then I'm going to open up the scale here and I'm going to adjust the Y scale so we've got a sort of equal margin at the top like that. Okay, so that's my basic text. And then I'm going to, I think, clone that group just in case we wanted to change the text at any point. So right click, make clone layer. We can hide this group, send it back behind our background. So what I'm going to do with this clone is drop it into a new group. So object, new group, and drop it into there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to this group a rectangular mask and I'm going to draw it down like that. So it's a long thin strip like so. I'm going to center it up, come over to the mask controls. I'm going to have a width of 10 and for the height I'm going to go with 1080 because that's the height of my project. So then what I want to do is I want to animate this rectangular mask. So I'm going to come to the first frame on the timeline, open up the position. I'm going to hit a keyframe for the X position and set that to -960. Then I'm going to step forward to frame 180 and set that to +960. Now I want you to notice that my first frame is numbered at 1. So if yours is not, you will have to come over to settings and time and make sure frame numbering starts from 1, not from 0. Okay, so now we've got a long thin strip that runs through our text like that. So I'm going to call this group upper, and then I'm going to select my clone layer, and I'm going to open up the crop, and I'm going to crop the bottom by 540 like so. So then, having made this upper group, I'm going to duplicate it. So right click, duplicate. Obviously we want to call this lower, and I'm going to come to the clone properties, and instead of 540 from the bottom, I'm going to have 540 from the top. Now for some reason that doesn't quite work, not quite sure why, it's not joining up. So we just need to adjust that value till that joins up with the other one like that, so 520. So then we have to get more complicated still because we need to make a clone of each of these two. So right click on that lower group and let's call this lower. And let's right click on the upper group and make a clone of that and call it upper. And let's just drag the lower out into a new group and then let's drag the upper out to join it. So now we can close down that group with the original mask in it and we can send it to the back and we can start to work on our animation. So I'm going to grab first of all the upper and I'm going to come to object and replicate. So I want rectangle tile fill, that's all good. I'm going to set the size to 0. I'm going to set the number of columns to 180. You remember that was the animation of our rectangular mask, and I'm going to set the rows to 1. I also want to set the origin to left. I want to turn off play frames and I want to set the source frame offset to 1. And now, as if by magic, the word is being reconstituted. There's no animation to it, but that's fine because we're going to add animation using a sequence replicator. So I'm going to come to replicator, sequence replicator. I'm going to add scale. Now what we want to do here is we want to open up the scale. And where it says sequencing, we want to select from keyframes. So what we're going to do is we're going to keyframe that Y scale. So let's come to the first frame of our timeline. Let's hit a keyframe for that. Let's come forward to something like 120. And let's set that Y scale to 0. And you can't see anything yet, but that's because we need to set the spread to 180. And now you can see we've got this diagonal line like that that's animating. I want to set our end condition to ping pong and the number of loops to 4. So then it's going to go down and up and down and up like that. So we don't want this sort of straight line. What we actually want is a nice curved line. So let's click on the Y scale, show in keyframe editor. Let's select that last keyframe and let's choose ease in. And you can see immediately that that changes the profile like so. So now let's close down the keyframe editor. Let's call this replicator upper and let's duplicate it. So right click, duplicate. Now we want the other clone for this. So come down here and select that lower clone and drop it into the source well down here. And now you can see we've got the bottom half. Now you'll notice that it's all a bit jaggy and steppy, but that's not a problem because we are actually going to process this group. First of all, let's just add a Gaussian blur and let's set the amount to something like 24. Then I'm going to come to filters and color and levels. I'm going to open up the histogram. I'm going to open up the opacity. I'm going to set my white in value to 0.95 and my black in value to 0.9. And now you see we've got a nice sharp edge. Now there's a little bit of an issue here. You can see that I didn't get my crops quite right. So we have to step down into our original group here where we did our cropping. And let's just adjust that value. I don't know which way I need to go. Just let's go the other way like that. So 518 on that. Okay, so I've sorted that out. So now that's all looking smoother and tidier. So let's just also give it some color. So let's select the group and stylize and fill. Choose any sort of color. It doesn't really matter. This is not about the design. It's just about showing the mechanics of this thing. So then we want to work out how to do the other half of it where it's filling in from the top. So I'm going to select this group and I'm going to duplicate it. So right click, duplicate. So let's call this outer, I think. And let's call this other one inner. A lot of this project is about tidy organization. So it's very important to try and keep everything as tidy as we can and not confuse ourselves. So I'm going to turn off the inner group and I'm going to think about what to do with this outer group. Essentially what we need to do is we need to adjust the anchor points for these two clones here that are being used for our replicators. So I'm going to come over to the lower here and I'm going to set the anchor point to negative 540. And for the upper, I'm going to set the anchor point to positive 540. Now you can see that the bottom is on the top and the top is on the bottom, but that's not a problem because what we can do is we can come to our respective replicators. And again, we need to label this properly. So this is going to be outer upper, and I need to set it to 540 on Y. And let's call this one outer lower, and let's set its Y position to negative 540. And you can see that we've now got this outer effect like that, and we can just change up our fill color so it's something very different and we can turn back on our inner group. So now we've got one remaining problem, which is that the animation of the sequence replicator is going the wrong way. So let's come into these two sequence replicators. Let's come to the first frame, and where the Y was 100%, let's set it to 0. Let's do the same with this other one here. Set it to 0. Let's step forward to the next keyframe and let's set that to 100. And let's do the same thing with the other sequence replicator. Set that one to 100. And well done if you spotted that the easier way of doing that would be to use reverse keyframes in the keyframe editor. So now, there you go. We've got our effect. Quite a lot of setup, but it is really rather nice to look at, I think. Now, you probably will find that you're going to struggle a little bit with this. It is something you're going to have to render to see rather than hoping to be able to play it back in real time. So do make sure to set it to best as well, because then you'll avoid any sort of strange little rendering artifacts which you'll get if you haven't done that. But that really is the effect. As I say, it's really just all about being organized. So hope you have fun with it. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.